Hello and welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion of personal area network. So I was telling you that our computer, our desktop, our personal computer can be connected to all these peripherals, and this makes up a personal area network. Now if you remember, earlier we used to have these number of cables where we would try and figure out which cable goes into which socket in the CPU, and we would kind of struggle for a little while, and then finally we would have our printer connected, we would have our keyboard connected, we would have our monitor connected. But now recently, with the advent of Bluetooth, it's become so much easier. Your personal area network has evolved. You just have to get their Bluetooth working, put all these devices down, and they connect themselves. Bluetooth is a wireless technology which helps you create this personal area network. So whether you connect using Bluetooth or whether you connect using these cables, they constitute your personal area network. In fact, now you have these embedded devices, like for instance a pacemaker in somebody's heart, that is also based on a personal area network philosophy. The user remotely controls this pacemaker and it is forming its own personal area network. So personal area network is something which services one person, and it is generally spanning a 1 meter of distance around you. If we look at the next category of a network, that's a local area network. Now we are evolving these network categories according to their size. Smallest is a personal area network. The bigger network to a personal area network is a local area network. Now local area networks are also of two kinds. You can either have a wireless network or you can have a wired network. In wireless networks, your personal computers must have a radio modem, they must have an antenna, and then you need a wireless router. This is usually called an AP or an access point. This access point is connected usually to the ceiling of a room where you are setting up this network, and these devices will communicate through this access point or the wireless router, and they have to exchange all their data via this access point. Now the wireless networks have become quite popular because there are no cables to be seen. It looks much neater, and it is so much more easier to install, and it is giving us a fairly good speed of 10 million bits per second to almost 100 million bits per second. But nothing to compare with a wired network. A wired local area network gives us much higher speeds. A wired local area network gives 100 Mbps to almost 1 gigabits per second, and now with newer technology, local area networks are giving us speeds of 10 Gbps. Now in a wired local area network, you need these connection which has to be done with cables or wires. You can use copper cables, you can use optical fibers, and these personal computers in a local area network is then connected through a switch. IEEE has laid down certain standards for local area networks, like for instance IEEE 802.11 is a wireless standard for a local area network. Similarly, IEEE 802.3 is a standard for a wired network which is called Ethernet. All of us have heard this word Ethernet. So Ethernet is a switched LAN where the personal computers are connected through wires. There is no wireless connectivity here, and you can achieve speeds of 1 Gbps, 1 gigabits per second. It is possible to connect small LANs and make into one bigger LAN. You can use more switches, and these switches can connect into one another and you can create a bigger LAN. At the same time, if you have a very big LAN and you feel that it is a lot of data is getting delays in transfers, you can set up smaller logical LANs. Supposing in a building I have a big setup of LAN and I have two sections, maybe the account section and the library section, I can logically, virtually divide this bigger LAN into two setups, and the library section can work without needing to go through the account section. So, data is kind of divided. That is called setting up of logical LANs of a bigger LAN, and that sometimes it is called as a virtual LAN. Now, if I compare a wired network with a wireless network, then this any day is preferable over wireless. The delays are much less in a wired network. The errors are also much less in a wired network. Wireless networks are notorious for their higher error rates. As we progress, we will be spending more time on different kinds of LANs in our subsequent chapters, but I think at this point in time, this kind of a distinction should be sufficient. Now, why do we create LANs? Why do we need LANs? We need LANs to share our hardware. Maybe you know there are 10 computers in an organization but only one printer. So, all these 10 computers need to access the printer. It doesn't make any sense to have 10 printers because printers are not much to be used 24/7. So, you allocate one printer for 10 computers, that's called hardware sharing. You could be sharing some application layer programs, that's called software sharing. And of course, data sharing, who doesn't know about data sharing? So, you could make one computer, allocate it a lot of memory and make it your server, and you can kind of access your data from that server, you can store back your data to that server. So, basically with your networks, you are sharing hardware, software and data. This is another realization of a LAN. And now we can also identify a topology here. If you see, there is a backbone of star and it is supporting 3 bus. It is supporting 3 bus. So, the LANs differ from each other on the basis of the transmission media. Are they wireless? Are they using copper wires, or it is an optical fiber? And on the basis of the topology. That's how the LANs differ from each other. This is one such example where copper wires are being used and the topology is hybrid. This is another example of a local area network. This is a bus topology. So, actually what we today call as standard Ethernet, it evolved from what was called as a classic Ethernet. In classic Ethernet, one common cable was shared by many devices like this. So, this is a bus topology implementation. You have a back-end cable, you have these data links and you have these taps here. Now, in classic Ethernet, this cable was being shared by all these devices. So, to avoid conflicts as to who gets to deposit the data on the cable, there were arbitration mechanisms. There were certain techniques and algorithms which made these computers decide which one will send its data now. And these algorithms could be static, these could be dynamic. Static means maybe you could just allocate them time. So, you know, every first 10 minutes of the hour, this computer will use the cable, next 10 minutes, this will use the computer. So, you are allocating them specified time intervals where they will get to use the channel. The disadvantage is that when the time slot for this computer comes, it may not have data to send. So, it's kind of a little bit of a wastage, not the optimal use of this backbone. So, then there was another kind of algorithm which evolved, and they are called dynamic algorithms. So in that case, there is a technique by which you can kind of, whenever you have data to send, you can sense this channel. Sense, carrier sense, multiple access. Everybody will sense the availability of this channel. If a station has data to send and it senses the channel and feels there is no data at the moment on the channel, it will grab the channel and send the data. That's called carrier sense multiple access. And the original kinds of Ethernet, the first kinds of Ethernet, the classic Ethernet, were using these mechanisms to share a common channel. So this is an example of a local area network which is implementing only one topology, a bus topology, and this kind of a network will be there probably in a single building LAN. Now if you have a campus and there are multiple buildings, then maybe you will have to support many topologies. Each building will have its own specific topology as per its requirement. This building, this part of the building or this part of the campus is supporting a bus topology. This is also supporting a bus topology. This has implemented a ring topology, and this has implemented a star topology with the hub, and the main backbone is, yes, it's a bus. The main backbone is a bus topology. So again, this is a hybrid topology local area network, and it is in a campus, so probably one of the largest kinds of local area networks. If you go beyond that, then usually we call it a metropolitan area network. So a MAN or a metropolitan area network is usually spanning an entire city, and people who want very fast connectivity to internet, they become a part of metropolitan area network. There are two ways of servicing a city with this network. One is using the already laid public telephone networks. So the public telephone network will give you DSL, digital subscriber lines, and using those lines you can access internet. And most of us at some point in time were getting connected to the internet through our telephone lines. So an individual can use that, a company can use that, a network can use that, but basically the entire area is restricted to a city, so about 10 kilometers radius. Another way to have a metropolitan area network is to use the existing cable network. Now the cable network was laid out to give TV channels to different homes. There was this one big antenna, then there were these junction boxes, and through these junction boxes the TV channels were beamed to different homes in a city or in a locality. And then the cable operators thought that there is some unused part of the spectrum which can be used for the internet data. So in the head end, both the data from the internet and the TV signals were combined together, and they are being beamed into different homes, and this is called MAN being supported by the cable TV network. So either the telephone network or the cable TV network usually supports a metropolitan area network. So PAN, the personal area network, is the smallest network. Bigger than that is a local area network, the LAN, and bigger than LAN is a metropolitan area network, the MAN. Now let's look at the next category. A wide area network, the WAN. It helps in transportation of text, images, data, video, audio all over the world. So you see these computers located in different countries, in different continents, and they are connected. They are connected through these links. And since they are spanning the entire continent, the entire world, it is called as a wide area network. Wide area network is the largest of all networks. There are two ways in which WAN supports connections: a switched WAN and a point-to-point WAN. In a point-to-point WAN, we use the telephone lines and we get connected to an internet service provider using our computers. So you have a modem which converts your digital computer data into an analog data. Why analog data? Because the telephone lines only support analog data. So your computer digital data has to be converted into analog data, and that is done by modem. And when you reach the internet providers, then this analog data has to be converted back into digital data. That's called point-to-point WAN. The other kind of WAN is a switched WAN. In that you see these yellow boxes. These are called the routers. These are also network devices like your repeaters. We had repeaters in some of the topologies. Now these connecting devices are called routers in context of a WAN. And these yellow devices which are connected to each other are usually privately owned by companies. And the end users can use the facilities provided by these switched WAN routers, and it has a very specific term. It is called a subnet. Now when the subnet is catering to the end users, it is called as a switched WAN, and when a telephone line is catering to the computers, it is called as a point-to-point WAN. Now the difference between the WAN, MAN and LAN has now actually thinned out. No computer network exists on its own. Very rarely you will find a LAN existing by itself, a WAN existing by itself, or a MAN existing by itself. Now more or less we have all these LANs, WANs connected together, and they form what is called as a inter-network. Inter-network is connection of many LANs, many WANs, and they use specialized machines to connect to each other, because each of these networks have different underlying topologies. A WAN could be made with a different transmission media, with a different topology. There could be different LANs based on different topologies, and since they are not made similarly and yet they are able to communicate, we need some translations between them, and these translators are provided by what is called as gateways, and with the help of gateways we connect all these different networks to form what is called as an inter-network, or sometimes it's called internet. The internet, which we are all used to, is an example of inter-network. The largest inter-network that we all use is the internet, and internet extends all over the world. It encompasses many countries, it encompasses many networks, and it is not a simple hierarchical structure. It is constantly changing. Networks are changing, their topologies sometimes are evolved, new users are being added constantly to networks, and some of the defunct networks are being taken away also. So the internet as we are used to it is constantly changing and evolving. It does not remain the same, and therefore it is very difficult to give a very normal kind of a standard structure to the internet. It is constantly changing. For internet we have certain agencies which are providing services to us. They are called internet service providers. Right at the top we have the international ISPs, the international service providers, the international internet service providers. Below them come the national internet service providers. And in national internet service providers are usually fed by the regional internet service providers, and then at the end, at the fag end of the hierarchy are the local internet service providers. The local internet service providers can be connected to the regional internet service providers, or they can be connected directly to the national internet service providers. So that's the kind of a hierarchy you have when you are talking about the internet, which is the largest inter-network. Now, when we come to internet and its uses, I mean, there is no end to it. Whether you want to study, whether you want to do some shopping, whether you want to read newspapers, everything is available on the internet. And therefore, the internet, the largest network of networks, is very important, and we will be spending a lot of time in trying to understand how this internet works. All our ISPs can communicate with each other with the help of a specialized network which is called a NAP, Network Access Point. Network Access Point lets these internet service providers talk to each other, and all these terminologies will be used again and again when we explain the working of the internet. So once again, I reiterate, computer network is the connection of various devices and links. The way these devices and links are connected forms a topology. And one topology basically means one kind of network. There are categorization of networks based on their sizes. That gives rise to a personal area network, a local area network, a metropolitan area network, a wide area network, and an inter-network. Now, to let these all inter-network of networks communicate with each other and work efficiently, we define what is called as protocols and standards. Protocols and standards are two different things. Protocol is a rule. Protocol is something which is laid down, which has to be followed when you are implementing an inter-network. There are standard rules which will tell a system what is the syntax, what is the semantics, what is the time frame, I mean, what has to be sent, how it has to be sent, why it has to be sent. All these questions are answered when you choose a protocol. I'll give you a very simple example. Now, I had always told you that our actual exchange of data between computers is in the form of raw bits. So, you have ones and zeros which are always going from one place to another. Now, if you have a sequence of long ones and zeros, obviously there is some significance. You are sending your data, you are also sending some addressing mechanism, because if you are connected between various networks and you have one device which is on one particular network which wishes to communicate with another device which is probably on a network which is probably miles away from you, then you must have a mechanism of having unique addresses. Now, maybe when you are sending the raw bits, the first 8 bits are representing an address. That is determined by a protocol. The protocol will determine that the first 8 bits of my data packet is referring to the address of my destination. Address of my destination. Now, there are two things. Address is one part, that is the syntax. The syntax says the first 8 bits is the address. Now, address of the destination, that is giving meaning to the address. Is this destination of the next device en route, or it is the address of the final destination? So, now you are attaching certain significance to the word address. Now, that's called semantics. Syntax, semantics. Two things which are associated with the protocol. Another thing which is associated with the protocol. Now, supposing I have two devices on two different networks and they are mismatched in their speeds. one device is able to generate 100 million bits per second, but the other device is much slower. It is generating or it is taking data only at the rate of 1 million bits per second, a mismatch. Now this mismatch also has to be managed by the connecting devices, and the protocol will do this as well. So the three things: what, why and how. What, why, how. Semantics, syntax, and how do you mismatch these speeds? How fast a data should be transmitted so that the eventual receiver does not miss out on data. It is not overwhelmed by a faster speed device. So this is what is governed by the protocol. So in addition to topology and the size, the third thing that is required for a computer network is an underlying protocol. Now we come to standards. Now standards are also needed before we start designing a computer network. Now all these devices are being manufactured by different vendors, and there has to be a certain standard so that all these manufacturing vendors follow, and when you use these equipment coming from different manufacturers and vendors, there should not be a problem in fitting them in. They should be able to perform the task for which they have been designed seamlessly. So that is where the standards come into the picture. Standards are also very essential. They are very, very necessary for this seamless combining of various networks into an inter-network. So protocols and standards, there is a difference between the two. Standards are generally laid down by standards creation committees, and they are aided by certain forums and regulatory agencies which are usually government run, and together these three decide on the standards. Protocols are usually based on the way you want to communicate, what you want to communicate. So protocols will decide that. There is a clear distinction between standards and protocols. There are very many companies which assist in making standards. Very commonly, everybody would have heard about it, is the ISO, International Standards Organization. ISO is a standards laying organization. Even IEEE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, they also lay down standards. And specifically for local area networks, the LANs, IEEE has laid down lots of standards, and those standards are based on their speeds, on the transmission media that have been used, on the topology that has been used. Based on that, IEEE has laid down standards in terms of the 802 series. IEEE 802 series. We will be looking into those shortly when we start discussing LANs. So these are different standards committee. And protocols is something that is implemented by the various layers, and they have certain deliverables, certain expectations which they try and fulfill. Protocols are usually implemented when you implement or when you become a part of a network. So I think I'll be stopping here now. We will continue with our discussion on protocols and standards, and we will move on to building a model for a network when we meet next. Take care and stay safe. Thank you.